Central bank certainly has changed its story on higher interest rates in this country. Look for them sometime next year. Also tapering on its bond purchases. But in the U.S., the Federal Reserve has maintained its commitment to stay still for a long time. That, of course, could change next week, but there are all expectations that it won't. Where does all of that and the prospect of higher market rates lead us when we think about real estate? Jeff Olin is the CEO of Vision Capital. Jeff, always good to have you with us. And I did want to start there with the kind of rate picture, because that's got to be one of the primary things you think about when it comes to these investments. What's your thought on rates, on real rates rising?
Real rates could rise, probably should rise a little bit, but it is very clear that monetary authorities globally have taken a stance, as they say, of lower for longer. They've mused about yield curve controls. You may recall Operation Twist in 2011, where the Fed sold short-term securities and used the proceeds to buy longer-dated bonds. Monetary authorities want interest rates to be lower, both to help the economy and, frankly, to help fund the huge debts that they're funding, that they're putting together to provide all the stimulus. So we're not overly concerned about interest rates for that reason. And, frankly, it's a really a big misnomer when rates rise, how they impact real estate and REITs in particular, was what we do. Because supply and demand always trump rates. And if rates are going up because the economy is good, that's good for real estate.
So one place that there's been some really interesting speculation, and it feels a little bit as though the bets have now landed in a positive way, is on the commercial side. There was some uncertainty about how things would unfold on commercial. How are you feeling about it these days? And is the general view that it'll be just fine?
Well, commercial can encompass a number of things, so let's parse them. It typically refers to industrial, retail, and office. I'm not sure exactly what your question is, but maybe we can touch briefly on all of them. Industrial on fire. It's now an old story about e-commerce. We coined the phrase 5 years ago that industrial is the new retail. Everybody gets it now. E-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales spiked to about 25% in March, and it ain't going back to 6% anytime soon. And that's now well recognized, and it will continue. But because of the pandemic, you've had two additional secular factors. The first is the advent of onshoring or nearshoring, the return of manufacturing to North America. This is not going to happen overnight. These are 50-year decisions. But hey, Canada couldn't rely on Donald Trump to get our masks from 3M over the border in April. I don't think any of us want to rely on China for pharmaceuticals. So that's the first thing. We met with two chief economists. They agree with us. They say 20% of all U.S. imports from China will become manufactured onshore. The second is, Nike will still make shoes in China or Cambodia, Vietnam, but Nike and others will have redundancy in the supply chain, additional inventories that will be carried here. Today, inventory as a percentage of sales is 10% lower than long-term averages. We think it goes 10% higher. So you combine e-commerce, onshoring, and supply chain redundancy. This bodes well. Toronto and Montreal are the lowest vacancy rates on the planet for industrial. Rents are skyrocketing. This is strong. Office, not so good. You've heard the CEOs of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Shopify, Facebook, Twitter, Salesforce, Target all say their workforce has worked really well from a remote work from home environment. Their long-term demand for office space is going to be lower. We believe them. A leading independent real estate first focused firm suggests that's 15% lower long-term demand. We think that's a good number. Retail more bifurcated. Malls, people go back to malls, but the apparel tenants that were generating the highest rents, they're not going to be able to pay those rents. So the valuations are going to come down, and the tenants these guys want, when I worked in real estate too many years ago, the pariahs were fitness centers and restaurants and theaters. Those are the tenants you want now to generate activity, but they can't afford to pay those rents. So valuations coming down. We like grocery store, pharmacy anchored, necessity based real estate. We think the valuations are reasonable there. That's our view on commercial.
So there's a lot of, one thing we know about you is you obviously back up your investing ideas with some of those theses. Let's get to some of those ideas. You may have already given us the kind of rationale for them, but Dream Industrial is one you like. Walk us just through briefly what it is about Dream that makes it attractive to you.
It's cheap. It's diversified between Canada, United States, and Europe. They're increasingly doing development. The Canadian REITs, we had a significant exposure to U.S. industrial. Canadian REITs look cheap, and we have a number of them. We like Dream a lot. We like Summit REIT a lot. We like Granite REIT. We like WPT. This is an interesting one. This is a REIT listed exclusively in Canada, but all U.S. properties, so it's off the radar screen for Americans. These are all great names, so you can own all of those right now because they're cheap. Summit has big exposure to Toronto, Montreal, which is really enjoying significant rent growth. Dream is a little bit more diversified, but also exposed. So those are all good names.
And another one, I'll throw it to Tricon Reach. What do you like about this one?
This is in the single-family rental home business. These are homes between 1,100 and 1,800 square feet that you rent, between $1,200 and $1,900 a month rent. Lower rent per square foot than an apartment. You get a backyard, you get a driveway. It's typically families that choose to locate there based on a local school district. This is primarily in the Sunbelt. Extremely well managed. Those are attributes that were there before the pandemic. But this sector is getting a boost from the pandemic because you're seeing a move from apartments away from common areas and elevators to single-family rental homes. You mean, can I move there, get a place in the back of the house to homeschool my kids or work from home and pay lower rent per square foot? I'm in. This has become the darling asset class globally of institutional investors. They're all clamoring to figure out how to get into this space. And most of the prescient ones know that you need a solid operating platform because you need clustering, really solid local management, efficient use of technology. And Tricon, as Blackstone recently validated by re-entering the space through Tricon, which we participated in, they said Tricon best-in-class management team. We agree with them. They're extraordinary.